Tuesday, January 28th. Bill hearings will start with HB 272. It is a departmental from the Maryland Department of Planning. Come on up. Madam Secretary, welcome, and please go ahead when you're ready.
Hello, everyone. How are you all? For the record, hi. Secretary Flora, Maryland Department of Planning, and I have with me...
This is Chuck Boyd with the Assistant Secretary of Planning Services.
Great. So we have a bill that is essentially House Bill 272, which is called the Modernization Bill, simply because it has 8 components to it to try to make your life and everyone's life easier, that are all part of either looking for added efficiency in how we do our work or addressing and better aligning things in code with what is actually happening in practice by some things being essentially outdated, antiquated, or no longer even occurring. So I'm going to walk you through. You have everything, so I want to be able to get straight to where you may have questions. So I want to just kind of walk you through the 8 different components. The objectives, as I kind of indicated earlier, is about efficiency, trying to remove things. I do want to say that when I came in as the new secretary, one of the things I challenged my team with is, let's get efficient, let's clean up, let's sort of see what's outdated, what's on the code that maybe is confusing because it's not even being used anymore. So we've gone through a fairly serious vetting process, essentially really over the last couple of years, to really try to figure out areas where we could, I think, do better and create more clarity to the public and create better alignment. So none of the 8 that we're putting forward are things that we haven't looked at very seriously and made sure we're coming to you with the most important items. And so I'm just going to go through those. The first one is under the election law, and it's requiring correspondence from the state administrator of elections regarding precinct boundaries. I put this in the category of efficiency, in that if we receive that data right away, we're in a better position essentially to be able to report sooner. We often do not get that data directly, or we don't get it directly from the Board of Elections, and so that there's a time lag and thus a data lag and thus inaccuracy. So by just simply doing a CC, we get the data immediately and we can do a much better job in terms of precinct population counts and maps and the things that we are responsible for. So that's under the election law article, and it's about trying to just improve efficiency. I'll go through all 8, and then maybe we can then circle back to where everyone has the most interest or questions. The second one is under the environmental article, 9-507, and this is adjusting MDP responsibilities and ensuring consistency of water and sewage plans and allowing for the solid waste management plans to be with the agency they're best aligned with, where the expertise is, and that is with MDE, and just basically making that alignment for better efficiency of why have multiple reviews or why have agency that's not really have the expertise doing that aspect of the review. And we coordinate very, very heavily with MDE, even with our water and sewer reviews. So that's just an efficiency component that we're proposing. The third area, and really all the remaining ones, are under the state finance and procurement article, starting with the first one, to adjust requirements to produce municipal population projections for all municipalities. This is another area really of efficiency in terms of producing for every single municipality, when in fact those that would still come to us, we would still produce and be able to focus our efforts essentially with those that request it, that we can actually spend time with, whereas all the other ones that aren't requesting it, don't need it, have it covered, no need to be providing more reporting than is necessary, and then focus, of course, on the counties that we also already do that with. And I'm doing a very short synopsis here, so we can certainly dig into these more. The fourth item is removing reference to the now discontinued State Economic Growth, Resource Protection and Planning Commission, as well as the reporting requirements of the commission. This is one that I would put under the category of alignment, in that it's essentially outdated. The commission hasn't existed for over 20 years. Another item that could cause confusion for someone looking in the article and wondering what that is. We're just simply saying that that should be removed. The fifth one is removing the outdated statute allowing for the transfer of MDP budget to the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. This is another one that I would put under the category of alignment, and that it's another outdated one. That's really has never occurred. We have actually reached out to, Chuck actually reached out to the National Capital Planning Commission to check in with them to make sure that they knew we were proposing this. Absolutely no concern on their part. And once again, just wanted to try to clean up what's on the books now that's never really happened and isn't anticipated in the future. Item 6 of the 8 is removing reference to outdated capital facilities planning responsibilities, which are now housed at DBM. This is another one I would classify under alignment of something that is really outdated. Once again, this is something that basically transferred capital budget duties back in 1989 to the to DBM. So there's really no need for myself as secretary or our agency to be named in that particular area of the statute. And we'd be just, once again, cleaning that up and removing that, something that hasn't been done in 35 years and has no reason to be done. The 7th area is another alignment one of something that's been very much outdated, which is removing responsibility to establish geographic classification standards that have been antiquated and basically replaced with modern GIS, Geographic Information Standards. And so we're basically saying, let's just be clear about what is stated in here and make sure it's accurate with today's standards. The final one, number 8 of this total package, includes adjusting the requirement of MDP to be a repository and clearinghouse for information on all real property available for public use in the state to simply being a repository for information on state-owned property. This is currently how we've been always doing it. For us to be able to know how each one is used is something that just really goes beyond what's practical, and really trying to be the repository about state-owned real property, which we would continue to do through our property mapping team and the great work that they do. And that's one just to be more efficient, not really changing anything right now, to be more clear about what we're actually doing right now and what seems to work well within the system. So that was a very quick overview summary of all 8, but Chuck and I stand here ready to answer any questions or clarifications you may have on any of this. Thank you.
Any questions on this bill? Okay, I didn't hear you discuss, I think it's towards the bottom of page 3, in the population projections you added in Baltimore metropolitan areas and request data from the Baltimore Metropolitan Council. Did I miss you discussing that provision?
I did not go into detail on that. Is there a question?
Yeah, what is that provision?
I'm going to let Chuck review that.
Yeah, that's just a
specifically.
clarification of the proper title of the Baltimore Metropolitan Council. We didn't, and they asked us to clarify that particular point. So it's just the appropriate naming of the Baltimore Metropolitan Planning Council.
Great. There was an amendment requested from the city of Gaithersburg suggesting you include the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments to get data.
Right. Again, that's the same thing, clarification of the proper title.
Okay. I don't think it's the same thing, because currently you get data for the DC area from the Capital Park and Planning Commission, and they're suggesting you also get data from the Metropolitan Planning Organization for the DC region. So we can take this up in subcommittee, but there's 5 other MPOs in the state. So if you're going to do it for Baltimore, I think the question is why not do it for the other areas?
Understood. We can follow up with
We can
that
follow
one.
up with you on our how we utilize that, yes.
Absolutely.
Terrific. Any other questions? Okay, thank you all so much. That concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 272.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We'll turn to House Bill 127, Department of Housing and Community Development, Maryland Housing Rehabilitation Program, Local Rehab Program Administration. I don't know, oh, we have the Secretary and his team. Come on up. Begin when ready.
Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, good to be with you again, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Jake Day, Secretary of the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development, and with me is Nicola Tran, DHCD's Director of Housing and Building Energy Programs. And I want to thank the Chair again for sponsoring this legislation on behalf of the Department. You have our written testimony, but I'll offer just a few key points in summary, and then I'll hand it over to Nicola. So House Bill 127 is a simple technical bill that changes regulations to the Maryland Housing Rehabilitation Program, or MHRP. This program is our primary program to assist low and moderate income homeowners with repairs to keep their homes safe, healthy, and livable. Program funds can be used for a variety of activities, and that includes structural repairs like roofs or foundations, code-related upgrades, and accessibility modifications to assist seniors and individuals with disabilities. Currently, program funds can only be awarded to local governments. The local governments can then award program funds directly to homeowners or through local community partners. This bill would expand the eligible recipients of the funding from DHCD to those certified nonprofit organizational partners, great organizations that do this work, Habitat for Humanity and other organizational partners that have a significant amount of capacity and are frequently pass-through organizations from municipalities and counties. Now, I want to be clear that nobody is a bigger proponent of local government and their role than I am, I'd like to think. But frankly, there is a burden that we place on local government administratively, financially, when we require them to handle this work, when there are partners in their community that they use to pass the monies on to the homeowners. So many of those counties and municipalities, especially smaller ones, don't have the capacity, staff or otherwise, to do this work. So this is a way that we can assist. By allowing nonprofit organizations to become eligible recipients of the rehabilitation funding, we will achieve several things to increase the program's reach and the program's impact. First, those communities that didn't have the capacity to participate to begin with may see this as a tool that they can bring to bear in their communities when they weren't otherwise. Second, a larger network of participating nonprofit partners will allow DHCD to more effectively disperse funds and more speedily disperse funds to the homeowners. And finally, the same partners who receive funding from DHCD's energy efficiency programs will now become eligible to receive the MHRP repair funds, which is helping us get to what we've been after for the last 2 years, which is a streamlined whole home approach so that there's no barrier to addressing the obstacles and challenges that a legacy homeowner is facing when trying to do repair work on their property. So for these reasons, I respectfully ask the committee for a favorable report on House Bill 127. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Tran.
Good afternoon, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and committee members. For the record, my name is Nicola Tran, and I'm the Director of the Whole Home Energy and Repair Programs at DHCD. And I'm here to answer any questions you might have about the programs or the bills.
Terrific. First question is Delegate Healy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much for the presentation. It's an interesting idea. I wanted to ask about what the standards are, what the criteria is for choosing nonprofits. I mean, when you open it, we have a lot more control over the local governments, and they're much more accountable to the public than a nonprofit would be. So, you know, what kind of standard, what do you have in mind to vet these nonprofits to make sure that they're legitimate, that they are going to do the work, and that they're not, that they're still going to be around to get it finished?
Yeah. I can answer that question. So we're currently employing this approach that we're proposing here already in our weatherization assistance programs, where we're working with a mix of local governments and nonprofit organizations to provide the services to clients. And through that program, we're employing a process that is called a request for applications that is opened to all eligible partners in a certain regular time period. And it lays out the expectations and the requirements to participate in the program. It requests a very detailed response from the applying partners that lays out how they will do the work, what controls they have in place, how they intend to comply with procurement requirements and such. And then we select the partners based on their competitive responses to that request for applications. We also have regular meetings with them where we monitor their performance and review the work that they provide.
And do you have any requirements that they have a track record already in the community doing similar work?
Yes, that is part of the requirements.
And do you also have requirements that they be locally owned and operated nonprofits, or is it open to national or people from other states or somebody who's going to create one just to do this?
I don't have the answer to that question. We'll have to look into that. I'm not sure about that one.
Delegate, that's a great question. So I would say we've got a good parallel in our state revitalization grant programs in that many of them are eligible or are open to both municipalities and counties and to certified nonprofits who, again, receive some acknowledgement from us that they are an eligible recipient. Part of the consideration there is their geographic focus and their presence. So it's capacity, it's track record, it's financial standing with the state, and its geographic focus. If we don't have a prescribed process for that within weatherization programs, it's certainly something that we could internally apply. I think we'd be open to considering if there was some language that you wanted to add around that in the statute, but I think we could also handle that administratively if you wanted us to
Would you
address
create regulations to implement it by laying out specific detailed criteria for what these nonprofits what kind of capacity they would have, what the minimum standards are, or something like that?
There are prescribed minimum standards associated with our expectations for the community development organizations that receive our state revitalization program. So if the same isn't true of our weatherization programs and couldn't easily be extended from there to this funding program, we could do it from we could essentially copy paste, and I don't mean to make light of that, but essentially copy those requirements over from another part of DHCD.
I just hope that you would go through the normal regulation creating process so that it gets reviewed by AELR.
Understood, so that it's published in COMAR and reviewed by AELR. Understood.
Thank you.
We'll get back to you on whether or not that has been done and how we would plan to go about that.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Any additional questions? Okay, Mr. Secretary, don't go anywhere. That concludes the bill hearing on HB 127. We'll now turn to HB 155, Housing and Community Development, Greenhouse Gas Emission Reductions, Issuances of Loans, and Achievements of Targets. Welcome back.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Good to be back with you. I think I need to say for the record again, my name is Jake Day, Secretary of Housing and Community Development. With me is Nicola Tran, Director of Housing and Building Energy Programs for DHCD. We're here to talk to you now about House Bill 155, which will help Maryland achieve its greenhouse gas emissions reduction goals and help Marylanders reduce their energy costs. And it accomplishes this by two critical things. First, it expands the multifamily energy efficiency and housing affordability, or MIHA, as it's colloquially known, greenhouse gas reduction program, to issue loans in addition to grants. So currently it provides for grants, and this will expand it to allow for loans as well, to support emissions reductions in multifamily communities, particularly those with low-income households. So this change will make the program more available and more attractive to developers. Multifamily housing finance is incredibly challenging, complex capital stack required, especially when you're trying to bring resources together in the most impactful and cost-effective way. So MIHA funds, specifically because they are a grant fund, can sometimes have this ripple effect in the financial plan associated with a affordable housing development. grant. So what it does is it reduces the value of the investment in the project, like tax credits. That disincentivizes developers and investors in incorporating MIHA into their projects. This is true with a multitude of grant programs where a loan is actually a more beneficial product to insert into the capital stack than a grant. The change that we're proposing brings the MIHA's greenhouse gas reduction program in line with an existing complementary program that uses Empower funds. That Empower version of MIHA already permits loans, and half of its participants receive the funds in the form of 0% deferred loans. So in essence, it's got the positive effect of a grant without the negative effect on the investment value of a grant. So if we want energy efficiency and emissions reductions in affordable housing, this is one of the ways that we can make it easier for our development partners to elect to incorporate our greenhouse gas reduction funds into their project. So House Bill 155 would achieve exactly that. Thus, the second part of the bill helps reposition DHCD to meet the ambitious greenhouse gas reduction and household energy savings goals that were articulated. In 2023, the General Assembly passed House Bill 169, which overhauled Empower Maryland and established new goals for energy savings targets in low-income housing for low-income households. It established the Green and Healthy Task Force, which I'm honored to chair, and it also developed or required us to develop and implement a comprehensive plan to achieve these energy savings goals. It authorized DHCD to use any and all programs consistent, and this is the language, consistent with federal law that would contribute to energy savings for low-income households. So we did exactly that. We produced a plan. The plan was approved by the PSC, and among other things, what it would do would provide energy retrofits to all low-income Maryland households by 2030. So we were set. We had goals. We had a plan. It was approved. It was adopted. Then, in last year's session, the General Assembly made some changes to that law, which inadvertently limited the funding sources to only those that are consistent with the Department of Energy or Empower. But there are other funds that we use. There are other funds that are achieving the exact same goals. So based on that limitation, DHCD would no longer be able to count half of the funding sources that were included in the originally approved plan. For example, the energy savings provided through the Maryland Energy Assistance Program, or MEAP, the MIHA Greenhouse Gas Reduction Program, and DHCD's rental lending, which, by the way, can contribute to the same reduction objectives, would no longer count because they are not governed by Department of Energy. However, all of these programs, all of these initiatives, all of these funding sources produce measurable energy savings that benefit low-income households in Maryland. Based on the original provisions of the 2023 bill, House Bill 169, DHCD is positioned and on track to meet its target. However, we need to be permitted to use all of the original funding sources that were approved in our plan. So what we're simply asking for is to go back to the original provision so that we can work on implementing our ambitious energy savings plan. I am also aware that there is a amendment, a clarifying amendment to this bill. I believe Delegate Allen has that and is going to put that forward. And so we respectfully ask for a favorable report on House Bill 155 with the forthcoming amendment from Delegate Allen. And with that, Nicola, do you have anything to add?
Thank you. For the record, Nicola Tran, Director of the Whole Home Energy and Repair Programs at DHCD. I don't have anything to add. I'm just here to answer any questions about the program or the change that the bill would make.
Great. Any questions for the Secretary or his Madam Vice Chair?
Thank you so much, and thank you for being here. I wanted to know, the clarifying amendment that Delegate Allen is bringing, is that one from the Green and Healthy Homes initiative? They asked for an amendment.
I believe that's right, Madam Vice Chair.
Yes, it's the same one.
Okay, thank you so much.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Secretary. Just stay right there.
Yes,
we're going to take a virtual witness favorable with amendment, the aforementioned Green and Healthy Homes Initiative, Justin Berry. Mr. Berry, please go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Trying to start my video here. Apologies. Great. All right. Thank you, Chair Corman, members of the committee, for the opportunity to testify here, especially virtually. My name is Justin Berry. I'm a senior analyst at Green and Healthy Homes Initiative, We're a nonprofit organization headquartered in Baltimore City, where I'm attending from today. Our mission is to address the social determinants of health, opportunity, and racial and health equity through the creation of healthy, safe, and climate-resilient homes. I'm here on behalf of GHHI to offer our support with the amendment, as mentioned, for this bill, focus on the second half of the bill relating to DHCD achieving its targets. We support this bill. It allows DHCD to bring together multiple programs in pursuit of its savings goal. This aligns with GHHI's Align, Braid, and Coordinate model for housing services, which helps make sure that homes with overlapping needs, especially low-income homes, can receive the multiple services they often require. The amendment, as mentioned, that we'd like to see is the language the language about the funding sources that count towards the goals to remain provide and procure, which is what's in the law now, rather than include, which is what the bill text that had been presented was. As noted, I believe Delegate Allen's amendment is the same one we've noted asking for. We think this is important to make clear that DHCD is seeking additional resources to scale their programs in pursuit of this savings goal, which is consistent with the plan they've presented. So finally, just reaffirming the support for the savings goal, which helps drive services to low-income households, benefits for health, climate, affordability, and our support for the work DHCD is doing. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Any questions for our virtual witness? Okay, thank you. And that concludes the bill hearing on HB 155. We'll now turn to HB 172, to Community Health and Safety Works Grant Program and Fund alterations. Mr. Secretary.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members. For the record, Jake Day, Secretary of Housing and Community Development. To my left is Carrie Snyder. That was a quick change. I didn't even see them switch. Who's the Director of Community and Economic Development Partnerships at DHCD. We're here to talk to you about House Bill 172. Again, thank you to the Chair for sponsoring this legislation. I think we've submitted written testimony as well, but we're here to talk to you about some changes to the Community Health and Safety Works Grant Program to better align this program and its operations and state revitalization goals. They will create the proposed changes will create a more effective program that complements other state resources, increasing the department's ability to layer resources and revitalize Maryland's communities and create great places. So this program, Community Health and Safety Works, was launched in fiscal year 2022. The program awards grant funds to support local initiatives to address public safety and environmental health concerns. It was originally funded with $20 million from federal ARPA money, American Rescue Plan Act funds, supporting 2 application rounds. The 3rd application round in fiscal year 2024 was supported by $10 million in state general funds. In that round, the program expanded the eligibility of applicants to local governments and anchor institutions in addition to nonprofits. It also broadened the eligible project types to include place-based projects that improve community safety and reduce environmental harm, thus adding the word health. Originally, it was termed Community Safety Works. The program has several grant categories. In fact, the proposed legislation combines and streamlines some of those, but generally speaking, it funds 2 different types of projects. First, physical improvements that promote public safety. This includes things like public lighting, altering traffic patterns to slow vehicles, promote walkable communities, upgrading security systems for local businesses and other stakeholders. That can include cameras and things like that. It also includes environmental and aesthetic improvements, engaging with local artists and designers to make places safer and more attractive, to make great places that residents value and are cared for. And sometimes it does both of these things. Some of these projects combine a multitude of physical improvements. The second thing it does is supports initiatives and that improve environmental health and justice. This includes efforts to prevent illegal dumping, reduce litter, or address heat islands or other issues related to climate change. In short, these are efforts to make our communities cleaner, greener, and more sustainable. Community Health and Safety Works was codified last year, and changes proposed by House Bill 172 will refine the program regulations to align with its current design and process and provide the department appropriate flexibility to shift focus and funding levels as community needs change concerning public safety, violence prevention, or environmental health. To power economic growth and sustainability in our communities, we need to ensure that they are great places to live, work, and play. public safety is a critical part of that process. And DHCD's Community Health and Safety Works program addresses that specific component. It has already invested resources for improvements in all corners of Maryland, and that includes examples like partnering with the Queen Anne's County Sheriff's Office, Parks Department, Planning and Zoning and Public Works, to mitigate traffic harm in the Stevensville Art and Entertainment District through public art and safety signage to reduce speeds and promote pedestrian safety. Supporting the installation of 60 cameras as part of a local security plan to ensure a refurbished pedestrian mall in Cumberland. Continues to make sure that that space, the Baltimore Street revitalization, continues to thrive while addressing concerns about public safety, visitor safety. It also supported the Rose Street Community Center to provide cleaning services and violence mediation in the Elwood Park community of Southeast Baltimore by employing at-risk residents to clean blocks and alleys to reduce blight and improve neighborhood safety. So this program, Community Health and Safety Works, has proven to be an effective program for reducing crime, improving public safety, and promoting cleaner and greener communities. And it's something that that helps DHCD partner with local stakeholders to make sure that great places we build are safe and they're healthy, and we want to make sure that it evolves to remain as effective as possible. And for those reasons, we respectfully request a favorable report on House Bill 172, and Carrie's here to answer any questions and give details if there are any questions about the program.
Great, thank you, Mr. Secretary. Any questions on this bill? Delegate Lewis.
I think, Mr. Chair, with respect, I think Chair.
Delegate Lewis.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Great to see you again. Long time no see. Mr. Secretary, Ms. Snyder, good to see you. I am aware of some great projects that have been funded through the Community Health and Safety Works program in my district, including projects to allow residents to gate or enclose their alleys. And I want to thank you for that program on behalf of my constituents and ask if there are any innovative environment and health initiatives that the program is now funding, or opportunities you see that we could encourage our constituents to pursue.
Delegate Lewis, I'll just note that I think the alley gating is a great example of innovation and has tremendous positive effects for litter and refuse and also safety and perception of safety. But Carrie, I'm sure you have more examples than
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I can speak to just some of the traffic calming and other kinds of pedestrian level improvements that help residents cross busy streets, especially those like school children who need to cross busy streets to get to school. So we have funded a number of those, particularly in FY24 through our environmental health track. Those projects are still ongoing, and I think when they're concluded, we'll have really good results to demonstrate how those types of kind of street level pedestrian friendly improvements have helped kind of reduce injury or harm and make people feel safer walking through their neighborhoods.
Thank you. And a quick follow-up, Mr. Chair. Will the program provide any sort of analytic reporting to really demonstrate the connection between the state investment of state dollars and health outcomes? That would be very powerful and useful for us.
So, Delegate, it's a great question, and it's something that we were talking about just before this meeting. We think it's really important, and the control that we have through the FY24 round, which was state general fund funded, gives us an ability to ask for a particular set of reporting that was less easy when we were using the ARPA dollars. But I think we can find some common ground between all 3 years in terms of analytics and reporting. We can dictate more in this current year and moving forward. So I think the answer to your question is yes, we will be happy to share it as we gather it, and we will also take suggestions as to what are some of the outcomes that people would be interested in hearing. So I think whether you, the committee, or the General Assembly writ large have an interest in articulating what outcomes you'd like us to report on, we can. Some of those are going to be obvious, in terms of public safety and public health outcomes. And then the last thing I'll note is there's also a real opportunity to layer Community Health and Safety Works into other funding or alongside of other funding products. Baltimore Street in Cumberland is a great example. OpenWorks in Baltimore, there's a great example of Community Health and Safety Works working alongside of other state revitalization program dollars to produce outcomes at a greater scale.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions on this bill? Okay, thank you. That concludes the bill hearing on HB 172. Do we have a representative for Delegate Bagnall here?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great. We will start on HB 100, Delegate Bagnall, Insurance Pooling Public Entity Definition. And if you have a panel, please bring them up.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Vice Chair, and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. My name is Rory Nolan. I am Delegate Bagnall's Chief of Staff, and she's asked me that I testify on her behalf today since she is in a concurrent hearing. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on House Bill 100. You have Delegate Bagnall's written testimony, so I will summarize. Over the interim, the Annapolis and Anne Arundel County Resilience Authority sought to enter an insurance pooling agreement for their members to receive more affordable health insurance. Public entities defined as political subdivisions, units of state or local government, or 501c3 tax-exempt nonprofits receiving at least half of its annual operating budget from the state or county are currently allowed under the current insurance article to enter insurance pooling agreements with other public entities. Resilience authorities are, for all intents and purposes, a public entity. Their members are appointed by the county and the city. They are nonprofits that receive more than half of their funding from the county. That being said, Anne Arundel County's legal counsel advised that due to some technicalities over the definition of a unit of local government, as well as the designation under which they're tax exempt, resilience authorities may not meet the definition of a public entity as described in the insurance article. This prevents their members from benefiting from reduced insurance costs under a pooling agreement, should they so choose. House Bill 100 offers a simple and very direct solution by amending the definition of a public entity under the insurance article to include resilience authorities. Doing so will decrease insurance costs to local governments and ensure that the good people on these authorities who work to mitigate the impact of climate change in our state can afford to take care of themselves. And for these reasons, we respectfully request a favorable report on House Bill 100. And I'll pass it over to our friends from the county. Kelly.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, and thank you also to Delegate Bagnall for introducing House Bill 100. My name is Kelly Levitt. I am the Assistant Personnel Officer for Pension and Benefits for Anne Arundel County. I oversee the unit that administers the county's group medical plan for employees and retirees. State and county law permit the county to enter into health benefits pooling agreements with eligible county-affiliated entities. These pooling agreements enable employees of those agencies to participate in the county group health plan at county rates, plus a minimal administrative fee. These eligible agencies include political subdivisions of the state, units of state or local government, or nonprofit corporations that receive at least 50% of their budget from the state or local government or are tax exempt under 501c3 or 4 of the Internal Revenue Code. The county currently has pooling agreements with organizations including the Arundel Community Development Services, Inc., the Anne Arundel Workforce Development Corporation, the Anne Arundel Economic Development Corporation, the Public Library Association of Anne Arundel County, and others. After the Resilience Authority of Annapolis and Anne Arundel County was established in 2021, the county wished to enter into a health benefits pooling agreement with the authority to allow their employees to participate in the county health plan. This bill would confirm the authority's eligibility to pool with the county for health benefits. In addition to benefiting Anne Arundel County and the Resilience Authority of Annapolis and Anne Arundel County, HB 100, House Bill 100, would provide the same clarification for resilience authorities established or contemplated in other jurisdictions. For that reason, we respectfully request a favorable report on House Bill 100. I thank you for your consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions from the committee.
Good afternoon. My name is Gregory Swain. I'm the county attorney for Anne Arundel County. I'm also here available for any questions you may have.
Great, thank you all. Are there any questions for this panel? Okay. Okay, thank you all for being here. I should just say to Rory, my old session secretary, good to see you. And Michael Sanderson from MACO is our next witness up on this bill. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Michael Sanderson with the Maryland Association of Counties. Why is this bill before you? Easiest question. Insurance is just a quirky thing. There are a number of places where state law already makes it really clear that local governments can cooperatively purchase. We ride on each other's contracts and that sort of stuff all the time. Insurance is special. You've treated it specially in state law for a lot of reasons, and you've got specific guardrails about how you can buy and pool for insurance. The definition isn't quite wide enough for these new entities, but this is a good local government practice. Anne Arundel and Annapolis are going to other states and talking about what they're doing as a leader. This is a really good idea that I hope catches on in Maryland and elsewhere. Let's expand the definition slightly. This is completely consistent with what you've already done. We just need to ratchet the bolts a little bit. Great bill. Please support.
Thank you. Are there any questions for MACO? Okay, thank you. That concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 100. We will now turn to House Bill 124, Delegate Rosenberg. I think I just saw him walk in. Residential property, assignment of contracts of sale, disclosure requirements, and rescission. If you have a panel, feel free to bring them up. Professor, please go ahead when ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 124 is the same bill that passed this committee last year after several years of work. We continue to have, however, conversations with the real property section of the bar regarding the bill. They have offered amendments or sent them to us today. So it's certainly the will of the committee whether you want to just move forward with the bill that you passed last year and leave it up to the Senate to work on these amendments, or whether you want to work with us on these amendments, you want us to work on them and come back to you. I hope your options don't include killing the bill. But I should note that is an option, but hopefully one you won't take. This bill is designed to provide protections for what are called wholesale sale of occupied property, where a potential buyer buys without taking title from the occupant of the homeowner. And we feel that the bill adequately protects the parties involved, but want to give the courtesy to the real property section, those who practice in this area, to look at their language before the committee moves forward, we hope with a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Bill Castelli on behalf of the Maryland Realtors, and we are in support of the bill. And I'll just quickly describe it. This is regarding a investment practice called wholesaling. The product that you passed last year was a consensus product that we received amendments from the Bar Association and others. But they do have, we think, some other language that we're going to take a look at as well. And it really is to provide disclosure so that when a owner of a property is dealing with a wholesaler, they have information to know that wholesaler may assign the property. And when they're dealing with a buyer and the buyer is dealing with a wholesaler, they know they're not dealing with the record owner of that property. So those disclosures are made to both parties, and that's really what this bill does. And we encourage a favorable report.
Good afternoon. Abdullah Hijazi here from the law firm of Hijazi and Carroll in Bowie, Maryland. I did testify before the same committee last year on the previous bill, and we were in support of the bill last year, and we remain in support of the bill this year. Don't have much to add beyond what's been said so far, but we are available if there are any questions, and would recommend that the bill be passed favorably.
Thank you. Are there any questions on House Bill 124? Okay, thank you all for being here. That concludes the bill here on House Bill 124. We'll now turn to House Bill 222. Our colleague, Speaker Pro Tem Stein, Public Safety, Corrugated Stainless Steel Tubing for Fuel Gas Piping Systems, Requirements and Prohibitions. I know you have a panel, so please bring them on up.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, and committee members, this is, for the record, Delegate Dana Stein to testify on House Bill 222. It is on a topic that may sound familiar from last year, corrugated stainless steel tubing, or CSST. CSST is a product that's used to deliver propane and gas to homes and other buildings, and it's widely used. But a problem with the tubing is that it can malfunction, causing leaks and in turn fires. Now, in 2022, with Delegate Holmes's House Bill 1052, we did improve the tubing safety by requiring the use of arc-resistant CSST. And arc-resistant CSST is a safer product, but it is still vulnerable to lightning. The average lightning strike is about 15 to 24 coulombs of energy. Not an expert on energy, but that is or electrical strength, but that is a reference coulombs. So again, the average lightning strike is 15 to 24 coulombs. Current standards for CSST allow the product to have resistance that's less than 5 coulombs. As a result, sometimes lightning strikes can be deadly. Since 2018, Maryland has experienced 3 fatalities because of CSST failures caused by lightning-induced strikes. 2 firefighters and 1 civilian have died. There have also been at least 24 other fires because of CSST failures in Maryland, some with tubing that has been arc-resistant. And as you'll hear, this is an issue that many people are concerned about, and including the fire service, and they'll be testifying. When I asked the captain of the Pikesville Volunteer Fire Company, which is one of the local fire companies in my district, he said he was very aware of CSST. He knew of the deaths of firefighters and had read the federal reports about those fatalities. He said CSST affects his members' safety. Now, with amendments, the bill requires CSST that can withstand 36 coulombs of electrical arcing. Most lightning strikes do not exceed that number. So the bill would provide a higher degree of safety. The effective date is not until October 2027. One final point, you may hear the opponents say, respect the code process. Do not vary from what the ICC code says. But we in the legislature have set requirements outside the ICC code process many times when we thought there were safety or other reasons. Delegate Holmes's bill in CSST in 2022 did that. Other legislation on pool safety, building energy efficiency, balcony inspections in multifamily buildings, and other topics have all required different and often stronger standards than were currently in place. So to protect homeowners and our firefighters, I urge support for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Corman and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee for the opportunity to speak on HB 222. And for the record, I am Frederick County Executive Jessica Fitzwater. I really want to thank Speaker Pro Tem Dana Stein for his sponsorship and leadership on this important bill. I'm here to speak on the importance of increasing safety standards for corrugated stainless steel tubing. As you have heard and will continue to hear from this panel, the current testing requirements for CSST are inadequate and are putting the lives of our residents and first responders at risk. Since 2018, the state of Maryland has experienced 3 fatalities because of fires caused by lightning-induced failure of CSST. And this issue became deeply personal to Frederick County when a CSST-related fire in 2021 resulted in the line-of-duty death of Frederick County Battalion Chief Josh Laird. Today, you will hear from his widow, Sarah Laird, as well as numerous other witnesses who have experience or expertise on this issue. Since the loss of Battalion Chief Josh Laird, the research around CSST's vulnerability to malfunction has continued to pile up. Academic institutions like UC Berkeley and MIT, as well as the Department of Energy and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, have invested significant resources into researching the impact of lightning on the safety of this product. This research has highlighted the need for higher safety standards. As Delegate Stein mentioned, we are open to amending the language to address concerns of the committee and to ensure that all manufacturers have the opportunity to develop a product that will meet the regulations that this body determines are appropriate. I have staff here from our Division of Planning and Permitting to discuss how local governments can assist with implementing these safer standards through the permitting and inspection process. As local and state government, we have a responsibility to our constituents, including our first responders, to adopt laws and policies that ensure the safety of our communities. So thank you for your consideration of HB 222, and I urge a favorable report.
Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, members of the committee. My name is Sarah Laird. Battalion Chief Josh Laird was my husband, and he was killed in a fire caused by a failure of corrugated stainless steel tubing under lightning strike conditions on August 11, 2021 in Frederick County, Maryland. My daughters and I will carry this loss with us forever. My oldest will graduate from high school in a few months with a picture of her father hanging from her cap. My youngest will get her driver's permit next month, but Chief Coe and her father's co-workers will be the ones teaching her to drive. Maryland has suffered 2 firefighter fatalities and 1 civilian fatality due to corrugated stainless steel tubing failure under lightning strike conditions. Since my husband's death 3 years ago, we have documented 30 CSST lightning fires in Maryland, though I know there are more. There is no system that is currently tracking or reporting these fires. So when I say that we documented them, it's taken many, many hours of searching and reading news articles and court records to find these fires. One of these fires occurred just as the legislative session was ending last year on the morning of April 2nd in Mount Airy, Maryland. Lightning struck a tree and traveled to the adjacent home, causing the CSST to fail and resulting in a concealed fire above the basement ceiling and below the first floor. In 2016, the National Association of State Fire Marshals conducted testing that showed CSST failure can also be caused by household electrical current. The ATF has also invested significant resources into testing and researching CSST and creating a training program to help firefighters survive these incidences. Concerns related to CSST have been well documented and prevalent nationwide since the 2000s. I am asking you to leverage your power entrusted to you by the citizens of the state of Maryland to compel this industry to do better by providing a favorable report for HB 0222, ensuring that the trust Marylanders put in your hands keeps them and their families safe.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Fleming. I'm the Chief Plumbing and Gas Inspector for the Frederick County Government. I am a State of Maryland Master Plumbing and Gas Inspector, as well as an International Code Council Certified Residential Inspector. I also have other certifications offer gas and plumbing to the highest level of ICC. The International Fuel and Gas Code, Section 403.5.4, says that CSST shall be listed in accordance with LC1-CSA 626. This standard only protects against 4.5 coulombs of energy for indirect lightning strikes. This standard is not safe for this state. This piping can still be purchased within the state of Maryland for anybody to buy and install. With CSST piping being available to purchase in the state of Maryland, homeowners can buy and install this product without knowing the dangers of installing this gas piping material. Consumers are not advised that they must be certified by the manufacturer and have the proper state licensing to safely install this product. It is much easier and cheaper for homeowners to install themselves in lieu of hiring a properly licensed and certified plumber to install. There are many rules to CSST piping per the manufacturer's recommendations, which are not consistent between manufacturers. Being able to purchase this product in the state is a safety risk to all who purchase it. If CSST being sold in the state of Maryland can withstand the average lightning strike for the state and installed per code and manufacturer specifications, it will keep homeowners safe even if the consumer does not know the dangers of this product and what lightning strikes can do to CSST. What can do to CSST that only meets the minimum requirements of the code, of the ICC code. I am hoping that this council passes this bill and keeps the public safe from causing damage that can be devastating to them and their families. Thanks.
Thank you. And Mrs. Laird, thank you for being here again and for carrying on with your family in a way to try to help others from going through what you've had to go through. Delegate Stein, is Captain Matthews also on your panel? Do you want to bring him up? Please go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Craig Matthews. I'm a captain with Howard County Fire and Rescue, currently assigned to the Office of the Fire Marshal Fire Investigation Division. It is my responsibility to investigate fires that happen within Howard County, as well as I respond to several other fires throughout the state of Maryland. Throughout my assignment within the Office of the Fire Marshal, I've responded to dozens of fires that were the result of failure of CSST due to lightning. There's only been one time that we have been able to determine that household current electric caused the CSST to fail. All the other dozens of times were the result of lightning strikes. Through our investigations, we follow the scientific method. It's a 7-step process where we recognize the need, we define the problem, and then we start to collect our data, we analyze our data, and then we start to develop hypotheses of what potentially may have, caused this fire. So then we start to test our hypotheses, and then we draw a final conclusion based on everything that we've been able to rule out or disprove in our area of origin. Throughout that, when CSST is routed through the house and after a lightning strike, we are able to pull lightning reports. And in every one of these instances, a lightning report will show that a lightning strike either struck the structure or struck something nearby. We are able to then follow in through the structure of the CSST. In many of these instances, we're able to find arc holes, because as the lightning is trying to find its path to ground after it energizes the CSST, anything that is metallic that is close by, it is arcing to, forming a hole in the CSST, releasing the fugitive gas, and then simultaneously igniting that. And in these instances, the first fuel ignited is the structure of the house, where many of the fires, it's lightweight combustibles. These are in interstitial spaces, and the first fuel is the structure. I ask for a favorable report.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the sponsor or his panel? Okay, thank you again, and Mrs. Laird, especially thank you to you. We also have favorable testimony from Michael Sanderson from the Maryland Association of Counties.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and committee members. I'm Michael Sanderson with the Maryland Association of Counties. I don't think I can add to the weight of the panel that you just heard and the circumstances that have come about from these construction materials. I'll just say that, for many of us who've been around the track a few times in Annapolis, sometimes it takes a while to find the bullseye with a good idea. I think there's a core good idea in this bill. You're going to face other legislation where we talk later this session on an unrelated area where we talk about, is it time to step in and regulate because something terrible might happen? One day the worst could happen if we don't step in and act. Here you've got the reverse story. Like, the worst has already happened. We already know how bad this can be. You have an opportunity to come in and try and fix it. I think it's worth that effort. So we support the bill. If you need to tweak it, if you need to massage it, let's do that. Let's get a good bill passed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions for Michael? Thank you. At this time, we will move to the unfavorable testimony. It looks like we have Robert Torbin, Jamie Gregory, William Castelli, Jonathan Sargent, and Richard Fine. Bring up an extra chair or just rotate when you guys get a chance.
Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee, Jamie Gregory here representing Omega Flex. I have Jonathan Sargent and Bob Torben here with me, who both work for Omega Flex. Thank you for your time. If I may, a couple of items here. I will set up their testimony for you. HB 222, as introduced, will require that only corrugated stainless steel tubing that meets the LC 1027 standard or attains 36 coulombs resistance may be used in new construction or renovated properties. You've heard that. Since 2014, the industry has studied L20 1027, and the 36 coulombs is essentially an indirect way to get to LC 1027 as a replacement standard for arc-resistant CSST. It was considered by both the CSA group as an alternate national standard and by the National Fire Protection Association for recognition in the National Fuel Gas Code. Both times LC 1027 was rejected. The LC 1027 testing criteria has been discussed and considered in communities and legislatures across the country. And at this moment, no jurisdiction in the country has implemented LC 1027. A little legislative history for all of you. During the 2022 Maryland General Assembly session, HB 1052 was adopted that states non-arc resistant jacketed corrugated stainless steel tubing may not be used in new construction or renovated property. That was signed into law by Governor Hogan. The Senate Finance Committee that same year considered an amendment to add LC 1027 and declined to do so. The 2022 Joint Chairman's Report that year initiated a report from the PSC highlighting the need for public education to ensure that existing CSST systems are properly bonded and grounded. 2024, last year, legislation was introduced. It was considered by the Housing and Real Property Subcommittee and ultimately not passed. Just finally,
Please wrap up.
The unintended consequence of this bill would be going around the nationally recognized codes and standards process that is developed
Thank you so
by
much for your
standards development
testimony.
organizations.
We'll
It
move
would
on.
ultimately
Sir,
weaken public
thank you
safety.
for your
Sorry.
testimony. We'll move to the next person. If a member has a question for you, they will ask. Please respect the 2-minute process. Next, your name for the record.
Thank you. My name is Jonathan Sargent. I work for Omega Flex. We're a manufacturer of corrugated tubing products, the primary one of which is corrugated stainless steel tubing. I speak today in opposition to HB 222 on the grounds that the bill is written as not workable and would actually serve to reduce safety by failure to reference the LC1 National Consensus Standard. Proponents the original bill as submitted referenced the LC 1027 listing criteria for CSST, which is where the 36 coulomb rating comes from. Whether or not the bill as adopted includes the LC 1027, it's the only source of a test for 36 coulombs. So just by referencing 36 coulombs, you're also requiring the LC 1027. 1027 is not a national consensus standard. It was developed through a process by one manufacturer. It was bought and paid for by one manufacturer as a listing criteria in order to list their product and their product only. The ICC, on the other hand, is a national consensus standard, and I wanted to review a little bit of what that means. The LC1 was developed by a committee, Canadian Standards Association, CSA, that utilizes a rigorous protocols for development and maintenance of the standard. It's enforced through audits from ANSI. Technical subcommittees are charged with the development and maintenance of standards must be balanced which means they're made up of manufacturers and industry participants. The standards are called living documents, which means they're constantly being updated, and the codes are constantly being updated to include the latest version of the standard. If we're to change the testing protocol for CSST, the proper way to do it would be to come to the LC1 committee, submit a proposal. They would deliberate that. It's deliberated by the task group. It goes to a main committee. It goes for CSA for a vote of the whole group before we make changes to it. So it's an open process that involves the entire industry. The 1027, on the other hand, is a closed process of one manufacturer. So I urge that this committee not adopt this proposal.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Robert Torben.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, committee members. I am Robert Torben, Senior Director of Government Affairs for Omega Flex. I just want to make it clear to the committee that there's two types of CSST, yellow and black. All, if not most, of all the fires that you heard from earlier witnesses were all yellow. This state has banned the use of yellow CSST. LC1 in the black testing has been written to improve the performances of the black products far beyond the yellow. So the state that we're sort of holding back is erroneous, and that the industry is constantly improving their product. The 36 coulombs, or LC 1027, is fiction. There is no basis in science for these numbers. They're based on direct strikes. All the things in your house are based on indirect strikes. And the numbers that would be necessary to establish this 36 coulombs don't exist in present-day standards. They have been offered to you as some bigger is better. That is not the case. And that the requirements in LC 1027 actually don't test for 36 coulombs. They test with multiple waveforms that are for the flash shield product that are much lower than 36. So you're being misled by this number. Do not believe that bigger is better, because the lightning energy in your house will never replicate the lightning energy that it's tested to in the laboratory. You don't have adequate grounding and bonding. So we recommend that you reject LC 1027 as the basis for the next code approval, or House Bill 222.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I believe we have William Castelli next.
I think Mr. Fine was going to go.
That works too. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Hi, I'm Richard Fine, General Counsel of Ward Manufacturing, which makes Ward Flex CSST. We're here today in respectful opposition to HB 222. In effect, this bill would circumvent national coding standards and adopt a listing criteria produced by a single manufacturer, a listing criteria that has been offered and subsequently rejected by national coding bodies. Regardless of whether or not the bill references LC 1027, the 36 coulomb floor that is proposed is in effect turning that LC 1027 listing criteria into the de facto standard here in Maryland. Ward places the utmost emphasis on safety when it comes to all of our products. CSST is no exception. We work closely with national standards bodies to ensure that our products meet the rigorous safety requirements necessary to ensure that all of our products keep people as safe as practicable. In addition, as General Counsel, I have visibility into safety claims regarding WardFlex CSST products. I can report that with respect to the black CSST available here in Maryland today, there have been virtually no safety-related claims regarding these products. While of course past practice is no guarantee of future events, this excellent safety record of the products on the market today is indicative of the thoughtful work of coding experts who come together annually to evaluate proper standards, including LC1. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Williams Castelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Bill Castelli, also on behalf of ASC Engineered Solutions. So we are also in opposition to the legislation, and a couple of points I want to make. You've heard kind of the code folks reference the fact that you have code-making bodies that take a lot of input and a lot of data from a lot of different sources. That is different to the process that we have here today, where we are listening to a number of sources bringing input into the committee, but it is not the kind of broad data-driven information that these code bodies use. And when these code bodies are looking at an issue, whether it is a product like this or another issue with a home, they're taking a look at all kinds of risks within the property. They're not just looking at this one particular risk. They're looking at it, comparing it to other risks when they make these recommendations for the updates in the code. And they take into consideration not only safety, they take into consideration affordability. And one of the points that the fiscal note makes is that, you know, there is one, or they refer to as limited suppliers of a product that would meet the LC 1027 standard. We are unaware of any other company except for one that meets that currently selling into the United States. So with one limited supplier, that is obviously going to have an impact on housing affordability, which I know is a concern to everybody here as well. So for those reasons, we think that these code-making bodies take in a lot of information from a lot of different sources and weigh a lot of important factors when they develop these codes. And for that reason, we would recommend opposition to this bill.
Mr. Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is for either Mr. Torben or Mr. Fine. My question is, have you spoken with the Howard County or Frederick County fire chiefs who definitely disagree with your conclusion that no fires have been caused by arc-resistant CSST? And I guess my follow-up would be, if not, I would suggest you do so.
Well, let me answer that. This is Mr. Torben. We had a recent conference call with State Fire Marshal, with Chief Cole and others to discuss this legislation. We did talk about data available on fires, at least to Chief Cole's point. We know that there have been fires here in Maryland. The manufacturers of CSST commonly get notified by plaintiffs' attorneys if there is fires involving our product. So we better than most know exactly what's going on here in Maryland. And most, if not all, of the fires here in Maryland have been with the yellow product. And we don't dispute that at all. That's why many of us, I'll speak for Omega Flex, we only sell our black product in the United States. We don't even put it on our yellow product out for sale, based on the fact that we know, based on these notices, that the black product is working. We've seen tenfold decrease in notices once we have switched to only black. So here in Maryland, there may be cases, but nobody has presented any data on this law or the bill or to us that we could respond to that would indicate you're seeing any significant increase in lightning fires due to the use of the black CSST products.
Madam Chair, if I could just follow up, thank you. Well, again, I would suggest you talk with the Howard and Frederick County fire chiefs. And I guess I do have one question. Are you saying that you only get data on CSST failures when you get sued by a plaintiff because there's been a fire caused by CSST?
Repeat the question, please.
My question is, do you only get information about CSST-induced fires when you get sued? Because you referred to plaintiffs' attorneys contacting you as being a source of information about CSST failures.
We follow through with NFPA. NFPA keeps fire statistics through the MFR systems, and every state fire marshal in this country reports fires. And we track the number of lightning fires in the United States, and that the number of lightning fires in the United States that are caused by CSST are so small that they don't even track them in the national database. They're statistically insignificant. There are millions of house fires in the United States every year. 375,000 of those make it into this database. And the number of CSST fires tracked by NFPA and all the state fire marshals would indicate just the opposite, and it is not a problem for black CSST, and that the numbers always reflect the use of yellow CSST, and many times because it's not properly installed or electrically protected.
Madam Chair, just one quick. In addition to the fire chiefs I mentioned, I'd also suggest you talk to the widows of the 2 firefighters who were killed through CSST fires, both of whom are in the hearing room today. Thank you.
Pro Tem Delegate Allen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we're talking. I know you talked about the black coded CSST being, not having any problems. Have you done any testing on that? And if so, is there a minimum standard in terms of coulombs that you would say the black CSST could meet potentially? Like if we're looking at something that industry-wide across the board, that the products that you say are already good and on the market, what kind of standard could they meet?
So the black products, all the black products that are sold in the United States meet the requirements of LC1. LC1 is based on actual field data. Again, we receive products back from the field that have suffered arcing damage. We give it to third-party forensic engineering companies to basically back calculate how much energy it took to make that hole. Mm-hmm. And typically it's 1 to 2 coulombs, with coulomb for the general population here is amps per second. Mm-hmm. It's a measure of energy duration over time. So with that knowledge, mm-hmm. we developed LC1 standard and basically made sure that the minimum safety margin was at least, in fact, it's a factor of 2.5. So it's not like we went for the minimum. We doubled the amount of energy as the minimum requirements. And all the products that are on the market today are tested by third-party lighting laboratories to make sure that they meet better than the minimum. All of our products exceed the minimum requirements. We don't test to the low end. All our products exceed the minimum as they get bigger in diameter by a factor of 5 or 6. So we're not looking to cut any corners here. So all the products that are on commercial sale meet these same requirements. And so it's a proven approach to making sure that we minimize the chances for lightning damage in the field.
So is there a number of coulombs that would meet? You said it was 1 to 2 coulombs can create a hole.
Right, so 1 or 2 coulombs can create a hole. That's why we're no longer installing yellow products here in Maryland. The black products, as you've heard testimony, will start at 4.5 coulombs.
Okay, but the average strength of lightning is a little bit more than that, isn't it?
Well, here we have to be careful. We're talking about direct lightning strikes that could have 25, 30 coulombs of energy. But CSST is not subject to a direct strike. It's inside your house. Lightning has to go through the roof, through the wood, to get to the wiring or the piping to be imposed on the CSST. So that by the time that lightning strike gets to and onto the piping, it's significantly reduced in its intensity. And again, our data comes from actual field failures so that we know how much energy is imposed on our product or CSST in general, so that we're relatively assured that we're not dealing with direct strikes. Mm-hmm. If the state of Maryland wants to protect your house, you need to install a lightning protection system, NFPA 780. Everything in your house is subject to damage from lightning.
And if I can just add to that. Please. So when we refer to a specific number of coulombs, I think it's a little misleading because these standards that we've been talking about, LC1, for example, refers to a process. So referring to a specific number by itself in isolation would actually be an incomplete method of assigning a particular minimum threshold to a product. So you'd have to define the whole process, which is why the existing standards have been created to reflect a very thorough analysis of what that process should be.
Okay, so the overall argument, though, is the existing standards that already exist are the ideal floor for the industry. Is that what we're kind of agreeing? By we, I mean you guys, I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the use of the word ideal, I mean, they have been thoroughly vetted by experts across the country and in Canada to properly keep people safe.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Terrassa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So one of you brought up affordable housing, and I just wanted to clarify something. You're not suggesting that in the name of affordable housing, we should put folks at risk, both the people that live in the homes and the firefighters that would show up if there is a fire.
So what I'm saying and the point I'm trying to make is that the code bodies take into consideration. And, you've heard reference to a minimum standard. The whole purpose of a building code is to create a safe environment. So when I'm saying they take into consideration affordability, other risks that firefighters and homeowners would be subject to, it's not just from this product or this particular item, it's a bunch of different things that they take a look at. So yeah, I do think affordability is one of those things that should be considered, but we don't view affordability as being opposite of safety in a case like this because it is very clear that in terms of the code bodies, they've taken a lot of information. The black product, I think that was referenced here before, we are not aware of black product failing in these instances.
But
to just get back to the affordability, the one company that is making the requirement that meets the 1027 has a patent against that. So it's not like other suppliers would be able to just manufacture that.
I think, Delegate, I think that was the key point, that the effect of this bill is that there would only be one supplier. And it said, even in the fiscal note, Maryland Labor further advises that there are limited suppliers of CSST that meet this bill's standards. So I think the point that Mr. Castelli was trying to make is that we may have supply and pricing issues.
So, but if this bill passed, you'd have to meet those standards. So there would be.
The current manufacturer that created the LC 1027 standard has 3 patents on their product that they have defended.
Okay, thank you.
Right, so just to clarify, we would be infringing their patents if we were making the same product.
Delegate Lehman.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For Mr. Torben, so first of all, I wanted to clarify that you are questioning, doubting what I heard you say, that these 36 fires were actually caused or exacerbated by lightning strikes where there was CSST present. Are you also questioning that the 3 deaths we heard about, that those cases were a result of lightning strikes with CSST?
I'm not questioning deaths. I'm not questioning that CSST contributed to those deaths, but there are other causes for those deaths besides lightning and CSST. What I'm saying is that is a version of CSST that we no longer sell in this state, and that the current products, all the black products, significantly raise the bar when it comes to safety, and that we don't have any knowledge that there's been failures of the black CSST here in Maryland.
Well, so first of all, I wanted to extend my sympathy to the two witnesses that we heard about who lost their husbands. I'm so sorry for your loss. It seemed, and I wasn't sure when Delegate Stein or when you talked about that number 36, that inside of that also included the 3 instances where there were fatalities. But that's what I heard you say. It seemed at the very least insensitive to me to imply that there's, that those deaths are not attributable when it seems,
Well, the number
my ear, that they are. We heard this bill last year, and that seemed very clear to me. And go ahead if you have another response, I guess, to that.
Well, I'm not sure I've fathomed your question and all of that, so excuse me, I'm hard of hearing. But the 36 Coulomb lever is just a number that was assigned to a design and not through the science of lightning protection. And that, in fact, you cannot achieve that level in your house because it's only achievable in lightning test facilities with massive grounding systems. So to use that as the new standard would be false science, and that we're trying to keep all aspects of the use of gas in the home safe, reliable, cost-effective. And so to add an unnecessary burden, larger numbers don't necessarily mean better protection.
Okay, but Mr. Torben, do you concede that there are fire service professionals that disagree with your assessment?
Well, there are fire protection specialists in here that we all agree that there have been fires caused by CSST, and that the new technologies far exceed the minimum expectations that were set for yellow. And so I think if we had, and we have had conversations with State Fire Marshal Gerassi in previous administration. Again, I just want to reiterate that we've reached out to Frederick County, and we have had discussions with the fire chiefs, and my lobbyists have spoken many times. And we're not that we're arguing, we're just saying, what is the best pathway forward? And again, the number is not the relevant criteria. It's the effectiveness against lightning damage. And if you can achieve that at a lower intensity, then that ought to be the way forward.
Okay, well, I respectfully think that number is very relevant, Mr. Torben. I have one other question, Mr. Chair, which is that do you concede that, your statement that the national standards that exist for CSST would put Maryland at odds with these standards? Do you concede Maryland can adopt different and stricter standards if it chooses?
If you adopt the bill as currently written, you will be the only state in the United States that is in violation of all existing codes and standards. Because the 36, the LC 1027, is not a standard. It is not nationally recognized. It is not in the fuel gas code recognized or used by the state of Maryland. So you would be basically out of compliance.
Well, I don't know exactly what that means, but thank you, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Ziegler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Forgive my ignorance, but if you had a buried propane tank, is the pipe that brought the propane from presumably some distance away from the house to your house this same material, or is the material just inside your house?
Well, there are options for whether it's propane or natural gas, but the piping in your yard that comes from your container to your house could be plastic, polyethylene, could be steel, coated steel, could be CSST underground. And then when you go into your house, you make a transition, and there are 3 code-approved materials in the IFGC: steel pipe, copper, CSST. You require metal pipe inside your house, but the outside piping could be plastic. Very different, not subject to the same conditions.
So not susceptible to a lightning strike,
well,
I'm guessing.
Again, let me try to explain this as simply as I can. Energizing gas piping, no matter what it is not the problem here. Putting electricity, it's a metallic pipe, it can conduct electricity.
Right. Okay.
It's when again, the bonding and grounding, when the electrical levels on these various metal pathways in your house, your copper water pipe, your electrical wiring, your heating and cooling ducts, when they get at different potentials, voltage potentials, lightning has a high voltage potential, thousands of amps, you can get an arc from one branch to the other. It's the arc that causes the damage. So if you can prevent the arc by bonding, by grounding, by physical separation, none of this would happen. It's not the lightning energy, it's the problems with electrical distribution in your house. So the black products deal with the arcing because we know we can't control the plumbers, the electricians, the framers. So we designed the jacket to absorb the arc that you would expect inside your house, not outside, striking the ground or the tree, but in your house on the pipe from those kinds of arcs. And so the levels of protection that are in the standard LC1 represent the best science for doing that task. LC 1027 just arbitrarily raises the number because they're massively over-designed, that's how I can put it nicely. Unnecessarily over-designed. It's just, they didn't do the science first, they did the design first. So increasing or changing to, let's say, flash shield, the arc's going to be the same, whether it's flash shield or my product, and the product's going to resist that arc because there's only going to be so much lightning energy inside your house on your piping based on precedent, based on experience, based on forensic examination of actual damage in the field, not something that's simulated in a laboratory someplace.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Naraki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I apologize, I'm coming in late, so some of this might have already been addressed, but I do have a question that I want to ask. So I'm a member of my local volunteer fire department. I take these issues very seriously, as I know everyone else in the room does, and nothing is more near and dear to my heart than making sure that, you know, my brothers and sisters in the fire department are safe. So I just want to start with that. But my question is, with respect to this topic, how would we ensure that everyone is operating off of that same standard, and how would we test for that standard? What's the objective mechanism? That's what I've been really trying to struggle with. How do you do that? I haven't yet seen anyone tell me for sure what the pathway is forward with that.
Are you referring to the existing standard or a new standard?
The new standard, the 36 Coulomb standard.
Yeah, so I think that's a problem that we've tried to mention here, is that actually isn't a defined standard that could be met in a consistent way. So the existing standard refers to a very specific process that all existing product sold in Maryland must meet, and the companies that sell that certify that it will, and that's through extensive testing, because there's a well-defined standard, LC1, that is required to be met. This concept of a specific number of coulombs is kind of an impossible thing to meet, because it doesn't define the particular process that you would have to go through to certify a product.
Okay.
All the black products in Maryland or the United States go through the same physical test. It's a physical test in a lightning it's called LTI, Lightning Technologies Incorporated, lightning test facility. The same facility you would test airplanes in, you test piping in. The LC1 standard prescribes a test curve, a test magnitude. So we present that data to our certifying agency, in this case CSA Group, and they basically issue us what's called a certificate of compliance that we present through the code, through the Maryland Plumbing Code. We present our products as meeting the requirements in the plumbing code, which is LC1, paragraph 5.16. And we present the certified paper documentation required to satisfy the law here in Maryland for certified products.
Yeah, I mean, one of the benefits of a code is repeatability to ensure compliance. And so just having this, almost arbitrary number of 36 coulombs doesn't invite that level of consistency which is required for safety.
Mr. Chair, may I ask one more? Thank you. My follow-up to that would be, and I've yet to really wrap around this either, why 36, right? Why not 50? Why not 70? Those are stronger numbers. So wouldn't theoretically that provide more protection, not less? So why that number as opposed to some other number?
Yeah, so the history here with this 36 number, we believe to be that this market participant that we've been talking about who owns the patents to a proprietary formula to create a very specific version of CSST was the sponsor of this particular kind of made-up standard that was tied to a 36 coulomb floor. We don't know how we have never evaluated their product to even confirm that it meets some type of coulomb level, but they effectively sponsored this standard that mentioned 36 coulombs. That's the only reason that you've got this 36 coulomb number out there.
We could have different numbers, but they have to be based on science. So again, it's not that we have minimum plumbing codes or minimum building codes or minimum CSST codes. We have codes and standards that have adequate margins of safety factors that is above the minimum required to ensure the public safety and welfare in their own homes, so that higher numbers do not necessarily make it better. If it's already way above the minimum, then that satisfies the requirements in codes and standards. Now, does people make higher rated materials? Yes, and they sell those products. The Flash Shield product is available here in Maryland, and installers can choose to use it. But the idea that we just constantly make the number higher, when do you stop? When the science doesn't support the number.
Thank you.
Delegate Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for coming. Well, first, let me apologize because I was kind of in and out of the hearing. I had to do my own bill hearings over in a different committee, so I apologize. I do remember last year on this bill, you guys mentioned that you had never lost a court case on these before. Is that still true?
I wasn't here last year, so I didn't testify on this bill.
Yeah, I think we would need more clarification on that question.
Yeah, okay. I think I remember someone mentioning basically like, you hadn't lost a trial or you hadn't been, I guess let me rephrase then. Have y'all been sued over this?
When you say over this, what like?
Over the pipes, over the issue of the bill.
We've been sued for subrogation recovery, not criminal suits, but subrogation cases to collect on insurance payouts. And to my knowledge, we've never lost a case.
Got it. So like product liability lawsuits, have you been sued for?
No.
Okay. And have you settled any cases related to the insufficiency of this technology out of court?
I mean, I would have to speak to my legal counsel.
Okay.
Well, as to how any of these cases have proceeded. The cases that I've been called as a witness, I know that we won those cases.
I know that sometimes settlements are afforded some sort of confidentiality, but would you all be willing to share any settlement figures and amounts with the committee to the extent they're not confidential?
I would,
to the
again.
extent they're not confidential,
Yeah.
sure.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to, and I apologize that I also was in and out, so this may have already been answered. But as I understand it, the bill requires one or the other standard, either the LC 1027 or the 36 coulombs. I'm just wondering, from what I understand, the LC 1027 standard has been out for about 10 years now by the fire marshals. And so I want to ask, have you invested any development in trying to reach this standard? trying to meet
So,
that.
I mean, what I would say is that, and I think maybe I speak for other companies that make CSST, we're always trying to look at new technologies to improve our products. Every competitor in any industry wants to have the most attractive product. And so, I think it's a true statement to say that we are always exploring improvements to our products.
Is that a yes or a no?
Well, that's all I can say is that we don't, if we had something on the market today that would meet this standard, I would tell you. We don't have anything that would meet the standard today that we could offer.
Let me answer it this way. This is not a standard, LC 1027. It's nothing that we aspire to meet. However, we are, like Ward, constantly trying to improve our products. And to some effect, we've actually increased our Coulomb resistance way above the minimum requirements for LC1. We don't publish those numbers. The fact of the matter is those products are in the field. We are not seeing any kind of runaway lightning failures associated with Counter-Strike because we've been able to improve our product. We don't necessarily need to change the standard. The products stand for themselves through their exemplary field experience in resisting arcing. We don't know how many millions of lightning strikes our tubing has been exposed to because we only find out if there's a failure. And we could be 1 in 20 million. I don't know. The answer is the numbers speak for themselves. Our product has a proven track record of reducing, if not eliminating, lightning fires around the United States.
But and also, if I may, LC1 is reviewed every year.
Yes.
Right? You just came from meetings earlier this week where it's reviewed and updated and.
Yes.
So it's not like it's a static standard that was passed umpteen years ago and doesn't improve.
Okay, so I apologize, I misspoke. If LC 1027 is not a standard, it's a recommendation. But it's a recommendation that's been out for 10 years from the fire marshals. And it sounds to me like you have not actually invested any product development in meeting that standard from your answers.
It's not a standard, ma'am.
I mean, recommendation, I'm sorry,
Well, and
recommendation.
to the point, again, you weren't here earlier, it is a technology, it is a listing criteria written around one specific product that has multiple patent protection. So in order to achieve those levels, which I do not desire to do because they're not necessary, but I would have to violate these patents or.
And excuse me, and you say they're not necessary, and you say your product speaks for itself, and yet we're hearing from widows here who have lost their family members because.
I know, but this was an earlier version of these products that we no longer manufacture.
Okay, thank you. One more question, Mr. Chair? Thank you so much. You said the 36 coulombs is not based on science. Is there a floor based on science that you would accept? Is there a number that you would accept that's based on science?
Yeah, we did. It's the 4.5 that's in the LC1 standard. Because it's based on actual field examination of arcing failures. Okay. How could you get better data than that if it's not based on actual field experience?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have two virtual informational witnesses, Avril Smith-Rose and Lisa Reicheld from the International Code Council. Please go ahead when you're ready.
I am here. This is Lisa Reicheld. I attempted to start my video, but it says I cannot.
Here you are. We can see you and we can hear you, so please go ahead.
Okay. I'm Lisa Reicheld. I am a director of plumbing, mechanical, and fuel gas technical resources at the International Code Council. I have about 25 years experience in codes and standards. Of course, at ICC, we are in the business of protecting the public and the safety of all, whether it's the public, their residences, or first responders. And to that end, we publish 15 different codes. Of course, one of them in subject today is the fuel gas code, which Maryland adopts. That code makes reference, as we have already heard in this testimony, to the ANSI LC1 standard. It's also CSA 6.26 fuel gas piping systems for corrugated stainless steel tubing. And in that standard, there is a requirement for the number of coulombs that the product should meet. So I am, here to say that it's unfortunate that we've lost any lives because of a situation with the CSST. But going forward, rather than make the Maryland law in contradiction to the code that they have adopted in the National Fuel Gas Code and the reference to the standard that is made in this standard, let's get at the root of this problem, and let's go to the ANSI LC1 CSA 626 standard and have this conversation about what the number of coulombs should be at that committee level, so that we're not just protecting the citizens and the firefighters in the state of Maryland, but because this standard is referenced not only in the International Fuel Gas Code, but in all the fuel gas codes across the U.S. Let's protect all the citizens and go to this standard and make these changes in that standard, so because it is referenced in all the codes, and not just protect Maryland and have Maryland in conflict with the code that they've adopted. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is your other witness going as well, or is he just here for questions?
I believe he's just here for questions, if there's any questions.
Okay. Are there any questions for our virtual witnesses? Okay, thank you for zooming in. We appreciate it. That concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 222. We'll now turn to House Bill 13, Delegate Ruff, Real Property Residential Contracts of Sale, Buyer Privacy Rights. And Delegate, if you have a panel or anything, feel free to bring them up.
I do have a panel. If you guys come on. Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I begin? Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and esteemed members of the Environment and Transportation Committee, thank you for the opportunity for me and my panel to speak to you today in support of House Bill 13, Residential Contracts of Sale, Buyer Privacy Rights. This bill is not just a matter of procedural change. It's an imperative step towards equity and fairness in our residential real estate markets and protecting home buyers from the harmful effects of discrimination in one of the most important transactions of their lives, the purchase of a home. Every day, Marylanders work tirelessly to achieve the American dream of home ownership. Yet for many, far too many, this dream has been denied due to unlawful discrimination, whether overt or implicit. This bill will eliminate the bias that may arise from providing a prospective buyer's name to a seller. Unfortunately, providing the name creates opportunities for unlawful discrimination based on race, gender, sexual orientation, national origin, or other protected characteristics. Whether intentional or not, this information can influence unduly the seller's perception of a potential buyer, leading to unfair outcomes that prevent many individuals from accessing housing opportunities simply because of who they are. House Bill 13 is a direct response to this problem. By requiring that the name of the buyer be omitted from the contract for sale until after the seller accepts the offer, we will ensure that the focus is placed squarely on the terms of the sale, not on personal characteristics that should never come into the factors of the decision. This simple change will provide a more level playing field for all Marylanders. This is the third time this bill has been put forth in my knowledge, and I'm proud to report that the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development is supporting this bill, recognizing that it aligns completely with our state's ongoing commitment to ensuring fair housing practices. Discrimination in housing transactions continues to be a significant challenge even in 2025. The impact of such discrimination can be devastating, perpetuating cycles of inequality and modern-day segregation that have lasting effects on individuals, families, and entire communities. If we are ever to eradicate the offensive vestiges of redlining, the despicable and racist practice that originated right here in Maryland. This is a bill that we must make a priority for passage. By eliminating the opportunity for bias based on a buyer's personal information, we as a legislature will guarantee more inclusive homeowner opportunities. We will create a system where a person's ability to purchase a home is judged by their financial capability and the integrity of their offer, not by the factors that are irrelevant. And to ensure that integrity, the bill requires that these buyers execute an agreement representing they've never been convicted of fraud involving a real estate purchase, and that they intend to occupy that residence as their primary residence. This bill has no fiscal note, it does not materially affect local government, and has a minimal effect on our small businesses. There are several oppositions to this bill. The main argument is that it does not remove the buyer's name from other documents involved in the mortgage process, in the sales process, such as the mortgage pre-approval letter. I believe this can easily be rectified with an amendment prohibiting the disclosure on these addendum documents as well. We are committed, my panel is committed to working with all stakeholders in this process to craft the optimal language while maintaining the integrity of the bill as it's written. So colleagues, I respectfully request a favorable report with the aforementioned potential amendments to House Bill 13. Let us take this step together to ensure that every Marylander, regardless of who they are, has an equal chance to pursue the American dream wherever they so choose. Thank you, and I would be glad to take questions after the rest of the panel has presented.
Thank you, Delegate Ruff. Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, distinguished delegates, when we set out to advocate buyer privacy in the name of fair housing in 2021, we really thought it was going to be a softball. Who doesn't want action that promotes fair housing? What realtor doesn't recognize the weight of the buyer's identity when evaluating offers to purchase with the seller? What consumer home buyer doesn't wonder why their high price offer and outstanding terms is not the winning one? We've had many words. We've had compelling arguments about this bill. We've had so much applause from our fellow realtors, and even our opposition admits to its merit. We're here about practicality. We know that fair housing laws and stated prohibitions from fair housing violations are not enough today to combat what technology provides and what we have seen today in a repealing of fair housing initiatives and protections. So when we see the premise of the argument that we already have fair housing protections be pulled back in our United States today, there is no better time for us to force and push an action that affirms our collective interest in fair housing. It's important that we work together, to stand together, to take a swing together, and to work together. We want to work with this committee, with our opposition, to create a bill that we can call a home run.
Great, thank you. Mr. Dotson?
Yes, thank you, Committee Chair, Vice Chair Boyce. You know, I usually, this has been a long road since 2021. We actually started talking about this in 2022. I am Rodney Dotson. I'm a former Greater Baltimore Realtor board member and former Equal Opportunity Chair of the Greater Baltimore Board of Realtors. My word, first word is change. Change is hard. Wouldn't everybody agree? Change is hard, but change is also inevitable. The change that HB 13 represents is so very, very small. In the process of buying a home, we contend that a person's name reveals so much that it didn't 50 years ago, so much more in today's time. And getting back to change, the recent DOJ's position on realtors and how they receive their commissions was a big thing in the real estate industry. Maryland Realtors, National Board of Realtor Associations all came together, and that process is working pretty seamlessly right now. They created addendums, and they made it work. So I asked, well, first of all, I want to tell you, it can be done. And I ask for a favorable vote once again, year 5.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Delegate Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Delegate, I appreciate you bringing this bill forward again and again and again. I understand the importance of it. I just want to make sure that I understand the documentation. So on the front, where you put the buyer and purchaser's name, that's just going to, your intent is that there would be no information there at all in reference to the buyer in terms of the name. However, all the other documents, the deeds, et cetera, would be containing the person's name. But on the front of the contract, there's no name there. Is that what your intent is? And how? And second question is, does your amendment that you're going to be bringing forward address the forms that will be revised?
Absolutely. So the intent is that the seller does not find out the potential buyer's name prior to the actual contract being consummated. Whether that requires redactions from those addendums, which would be my intended amendment that I would like to work together with all the stakeholders on, whatever is needed to be redacted should be redacted prior to the actual contract of sale being agreed to, and then the seller will be able to know the names. And so I think that can be solved with a pretty simple amendment, including the other documents that are involved in the contract for sale.
And that's what your proposed amendment is going to be in terms of the forms, et cetera. Because my biggest concern are the forms. You know, currently there's 34 pieces of paper that have to be done for a real estate contract. So my concern is the form. And I just don't want anyone getting into trouble because of the forms. I don't look good in orange, okay?
And if I may, each year, Maryland Realtors works with its forms committee to work through initiatives and objectives to support Maryland residential realtors. And every year on October 1st, new forms are provided to all Maryland residential realtors for use that can modify, improve, edit along the legislature for that year or for something that's been included with Maryland Realtors during the year. Our intent with a favorable report from this committee is to work with this committee and Maryland Realtors to engage the forms committee. There are various practical applications for this initiative to support buyer privacy in the name of fair housing. An example would be today, the buyer's name appears in the third line of the contract of sale. An example would be for the buyer's name to be removed and that field has been taken away from the first page of the agreement. And any addendum to the contract, the buyer, if you recall, we did work to address issues with the Attorney General, questions from the Bar Association, and this membership to make sure that we could support by buyer disclosure, by buyer signature, and by working through the purchase agreement to ensure that we have a seamless agreement that is used uniformly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any additional questions? Delegate Otto.
Yes, the panel, you're representing Sotheby's?
We're
Is that your employment, is that?
We're actually, my name is Kimberly Kepnes. My apology for the record. My name is Kimberly Kepnes. I'm the president of Monument Sotheby's International Realty. I'm an associate broker, realtor in the state of Maryland.
Okay.
And we're here to further an initiative for fair housing on behalf of all realtors and all home buyers in the state of Maryland.
Was this practice done in other jurisdictions that you say international? I presume you have other locations?
The company that we're licensed with is an international company. We have 1,100 offices globally.
So you're a franchise type?
We're a franchise, correct. We don't speak on behalf of Sotheby's International Realty. We're here to advocate for Maryland realtors and to make sure that our fair housing protections are sufficient today to combat the technological changes for what can be revealed about a buyer, for sellers in a contract of sale, to make sure that we can promote the fair housing initiatives that we have today.
And do you have a concentrated area in Maryland, or you have a footprint across the state? I'm sure you're licensed to do it everywhere.
Well, we want to work within our area of expertise. We have our license permits us to be licensed for the state of Maryland. We, of course, want to work within our area of expertise. I am a Howard County resident. I reside in Ellicott City. We have offices, 5 offices throughout Maryland, and we also have offices in Delaware, Pennsylvania.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Guyton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much, Delegate, for bringing this bill. I have a question for you, just so I understand. The only people who would not be privy to the buyer's information would be the seller? So the seller's agents would know the identity of the buyer, is that accurate? So their agent would know, but they would not see it written down?
No, their agent would not know either. You know, we want to work with the Forms Committee. Okay. One proposal is that a loan number will be on the contract to signify that this person has the financial capability to buy the home. Sure. Because usually realtors do their due diligence and at least call and verify, financial capability.
Sure. Thank you for answering that. And that was my question. And some people don't have a loan too, so I would, as you're working towards working that out, if it gets there. My concern, and I don't know if there's any evidence about it, would be if some realtors serve in dual capacity, where they're actually selling. They're working as a buyer and a seller's agency, and I just wondered how that would work. I believe realtors are, absolutely on the whole, very, very honest and good and would not participate in this kind of discrimination. But it's something to consider. And is that a concern for you, that the realtors would have this information in that case?
Well, the realtor's required to be fair and honest and to protect the public and to be a fiduciary in the transaction. That the realtor, if there were an unrepresented buyer, we don't have single member dual agency in Maryland. A realtor who has an unrepresented buyer would have to uphold the law and not disclose that information to the seller if it compromises the buyer.
Okay, thank you very much for that information.
Yeah. Delegate Healy.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just a very, very quick, question. You say you represent the Maryland Realtors, is that correct?
That's incorrect.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought that's what you were saying. So could you clarify, because I saw, that they're signed up in opposition to this bill. So who do you represent?
We're here to represent our...
No, who do you personally represent?
I don't represent anyone. I represent myself.
Okay.
And I represent a collective interest in the agents of our brokerage that have expressed interest in support of this initiative. We don't represent an organization. We are here as individual realtors. This is a grassroots legislation that came as a result of recognizing that implicit bias is in the housing industry and buyers are suffering as a result.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Okay, thank you. My apology.
Who you're speaking for. Thank you.
Delegate Davis.
And thank you for coming forward and being so passionate about this really important issue. Now, I remember, I believe last year, you both testified that you both had firsthand knowledge of the buyer's identity being used to discriminate. Is that true?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay, and you believe that this bill, or at least just holding the name, would help make a dent into that racial discrimination?
Yes, we thoroughly believe like it would act as if like a seatbelt. You know, is this bill going to eradicate all discrimination? Absolutely not. Evil is evil. We think that, you know, by shielding the buyer's name with the advance of technology, the seller will not have a chance to do their investigations, especially in a multi-offer situation. Just imagine, you know, a family that wants to move into a neighborhood because of the schooling district. They have 4 kids. Each generation of each kid is going to represent maybe a generation that goes to the school that their parents want them to go to, but they will not have that chance because a seller decided to do some investigating, became biased, and decided to decline the offer. That's the real life things that we are experiencing. I personally experienced a seller saying, oh yeah, we're going to accept your offer. He's a good guy. I see he went to Hopkins. I see he did this. I see, and you know, really flabbergasted, like, well, you can't do that, but that is a clear evidence that it does happen. So this bill is very important in shielding that bias and, you know, in getting buyers in position with no bias to the house that they want.
And if I could add to that, it's true that there's such discrimination that's unconscious, and it is implicit in looking for commonalities, in looking for sameness. There is an unintended exclusion, and what often can happen is that client who had the best offer and the most outstanding term doesn't win, and the answer from the realtor could be, you weren't the best offer. The seller decided to take a lower offer, and there were other compelling factors. And those other compelling factors often isn't nefarious, it's unintended. It's the distraction of who that client buyer is that encourages the seller away from the characteristics of that offer that are the most important, that price, the term. Devoid of the buyer, then the seller can focus squarely on price and term.
One more question, if I may. So this bill, well, once this bill is passed, this would be a tool that would help good-intentioned realtors fight back on discrimination?
This is a prohibition. This is a prohibition for home buyers in a residential contract of sale. It does not apply to entity purchases. The Attorney General in 2022 was concerned about entities being able to shield themselves. We had added an amendment that the bill was specifically for a natural person, a real person who is a home buyer who intends to occupy that home as a primary residence. And it's important to walk through those initiatives that at every pass when there has been a concern, we've looked thoughtfully at how we can support all Maryland Realtors to prohibit that name from any contract of sale in Maryland.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a panel of unfavorable witnesses: Lisa May from the Maryland Realtors, Dennis Rasmussen, the Rasmussen Group, Lori Graff, Maryland Building Industry Association. I think MBIA accidentally signed up twice because Bob Benton's also on here, but that doesn't seem right, does it? Uh-huh. Please go ahead when you're ready, Ms. May.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, Lisa May, representing Maryland Realtors, officially. Maryland Realtors' concerns with this bill are relatively unchanged from last year, and they approach, several different ways. First, this framework is at odds with our current real estate brokerage laws. Second, it has the potential to create immense liability for our real estate brokers and real estate licensees. And as was mentioned in the previous panel, it is somewhat ineffective because the buyer's identifying information appears elsewhere in the offer, both in the state-required disclosure and in the supplemental documents that often accompany an offer for sale. That said, realtors are, of course, your partners in preventing discrimination. In some of the most publicized instances of this happening, it was actually the realtors, the seller's realtor, that intervened, that testified against their former client because they knew exactly what was happening in these situations and that discrimination was occurring. And we, as Maryland Realtors, have also supported a number of measures to increase fair housing here in Maryland, including two this session, one of which was previously sponsored by Delegate Stewart. It really is our concern with this bill, the approach that is being taken. It just is not one that works for clients and for our members. And for that, we do have to request an unfavorable report.
Sure. My name is Brendan McKay. I am representing the Maryland Mortgage Bankers and Brokers Association. We are a client of Dennis Rasmussen, who registered me, so I'm Dennis Rasmussen up here. I also own a mortgage brokerage, McKay Mortgage, in Bethesda, Maryland. This will be my 20th year in the industry. We support the intent of this bill, but are currently opposing it largely for technical reasons, which might sound trivial, but we are in an industry where we are incredibly heavily regulated and technicalities matter. And as Delegate Ruff referenced, we have issue with what to do with the pre-approval letter. So part of the home buying process or making an offer, submitting that offer, and along with it, any seller, especially in competitive situations, is going to absolutely require a pre-approval letter if they are getting financing. And we're not currently able to issue a pre-approval letter without a name on it, and nor should anyone else be redacting information from a loan officer's pre-approval letter. That would be pretty inappropriate. It could cause all sorts of problems of just blanket pre-approval letters existing out there and different issues like that. That being said, it is an issue that I do think there could be a resolution to other than just removing it with a detailed buyer identification or something like that. But I don't want to speak with certainty on one resolution or the other, because I think that's a conversation that Maryland Department of Financial Regulation should be involved in. It's also something that we probably need to run by federal standards and the CFPB as well to make sure that we're not violating any federal laws by doing something like that as well. But for those reasons, we oppose, but I was able to catch a quick minute with Delegate Ruff and exchange information. So I'm looking forward to being involved in conversations about figuring out a way to make it work.
Great. I'll go next. Lori Graff, CEO of the Maryland Building Industry Association. I appreciate being here. It's the first time this session, so thank you for allowing us to testify. We represent home builders. I, too, had a conversation with the delegate prior to this hearing. We're a little bit concerned about the technical nature of this, as has been mentioned. We are not 100% sure how it applies to new construction, so we don't use real estate brokers. Our process is slightly different, so we want to make sure that we're—
Lori, can you try talking to the mic? It's
sorry. I apologize. Sorry.
Thank you. And that's for all of you when you're answering questions, just try to pull the mics towards you.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I apologize. So we're just concerned about how this affects new construction. It is, our process is different than resales. We don't get into bidding wars. Generally, someone wants to buy a house, they can buy a house. We're building on a lot that they've already purchased, those types of things. So we want to make sure that we know exactly technically how it will work and is not adversely affecting our home builders. So with that, we request an unfavorable report, but happy to work with the sponsor to try to figure out how that applies to new construction. Thank you.
Bob, feel free not to use the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Wow.
You know, my mother always told me they wouldn't pick on you if they didn't love you, so there you go. Just to echo what Ms. Graff said, I really do think there's a distinction with new homes. If you're going to go look at a new home, there's typically a model house. There's typically an agent of the seller sitting there. You go to look at it. If you're interested in it, you're going to come back to the model. They're going to see who you are. So I think there is a distinction here for new homes, and that's markedly different than when a realtor is at your house or my house, and somebody comes in and looks at it, and then the next thing you know, that person's agent contacts the seller's agent and says we want to negotiate a contract. So I think that's much more prevalent in those circumstances. So I do think that maybe we could work some language out to deal with the situation for new homes where you're going to see what the person looks like no matter what.
Thank you. First question is Delegate Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just like my question to the previous panel, my concern is simply the forms. And the mortgage gentleman, I don't really recognize.
Brendan McKay.
You talked about the pre-approval letter. Is it possible to have simply a loan number or some other type of identification on the pre-approval letter that you could continue to associate with the unnamed buyer on the contract?
I think so. In theory, certainly, and maybe in practice, it would have to be a long and detailed letter. You can't just like have buyer one, buyer two, buyer three, because one offer versus another if there's not a property address on the pre-approval letter, which are oftentimes is not. But I would also weigh the opinion of the Department of Financial Regulation heavily in something like that before being certain that it would work.
You also mentioned, if I may, Mr. Chair, you also mentioned a potential violation of federal law. Which laws would that, how would that conflict with federal law?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you specifically, other than that there are a lot of rules and regulations about the types of pre-approval and approval letters that we can put out there in the world on a federal level, coming out of, all tied into Dodd-Frank and current truth in lending requirements and things of that nature. It's a subject I could certainly become more informed on and speak more intelligently to it. But I can guarantee it wouldn't be acceptable to just have a blanket pre-approval letter out there without any identifying information whatsoever. There might be an alternative solution, and I can get that information. I just don't know it right now on the federal level.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Healy.
Just while everybody is talking, it occurred to me that when you're talking about financing and mortgages, that's one thing. I can see how, all the paperwork has to line up at some point. But for people who are going to put down cash, that they're not going to finance it. They're going to buy the house with, a senior citizen who's sold a house and going to turn around, and they're not going to be taking a 30-year mortgage. They're going to buy something to live in for the next few years of their lives. So how would that work? I mean, would there be any kind of barriers to that kind of thing in this kind of sale if the names are taken out and the identifying information is taken out?
So Delegate, usually if someone is making an all-cash offer, there would still be some sort of proof of funds letter or something that comes from their lending institution. You don't just go on faith that they have the cash that they say that they do. So there would still be some documentation of that would be submitted along with the offer.
So if an amendment had to be made, it would have to cover those kind of documents as well. Is that correct?
I believe that that's correct. You would also, another place that the buyer's name would typically appear is proof of the earnest money deposit that people put down to show that they're serious about buying the home. Oftentimes that's a canceled check that has a buyer's name and address on it.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Delegate Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question. My first question is for the Maryland Realtors representative. You mentioned liability. People throw that around a lot. What is the potential liability? Could you describe that?
Certainly. So we mentioned redacting information from contracts and redacting information from third-party documents like these lender letters and that we've mentioned. So if you miss one field and submit that to the seller as part of an offer, if an agent were to miss a field or to accidentally send the wrong version of a document to the seller that reveals the buyer's name, are they then guilty of a fair housing violation? Have they then violated this statute?
Okay.
And that's what we mean by liability.
Yeah, it's a real stretch. I do have another question. So you've heard testimony that there is discrimination happening like right now. And you think that, civil rights discrimination is either technical or cozy or easy? It's not. I'm going to answer it. It's not. Wouldn't you say?
Well, Delegate, I don't believe that at all. We take fair housing very, very seriously. It's why we are supporting legislation to change our state's wiretap statutes to allow for recording for fair housing violations.
Can we talk about this legislation, please?
Yes, ma'am.
What are you doing here?
Well, we have actually voluntarily added language to our brokerage agreements and to our exclusive representation agreements, which sellers and buyers must sign, that states that they must comply with all state, federal, local fair housing requirements during the course of their transaction.
So you see how important that is. When did you do that?
We do. We added that 2 or 3 years ago, I believe, along with a prohibition that our agents will not take part in forwarding any sort of non-contract, quote unquote, love letter between the buyer and the seller, because we do have buyers who want to be known to the sellers. And while we can't prohibit that, we did look into it, but it's constitutionally protected speech. We cannot stop a buyer from going to a seller and saying, I'm so-and-so, my agent, Marvin Holmes, is going to be submitting an offer. I would really like for you to pick me to purchase your home. There's nothing we can do about that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I do not see any further questions on this bill, so thank you all very much. That concludes the bill hearing on HB 13. We'll turn to HB 28, Delegate Boucher, Constitutional Amendment, a form of county government requirement to adopt charter home rule.
Next up. Which screen is that? Bonjour and good afternoon. For the record, I'm Christopher Eric Boucher, Delegate District 5, representing Carroll and Frederick counties. Chair Corman, I see you stepped out for a minute, Vice Chair Boyce, and my distinguished colleagues on environment and transportation, thank you for hearing my testimony on HB 28. This referendum bill has been motivated by my commitment to divine providence for saving my life on May 28, 1997. Your help is appreciated. The fundamental question put before the committee today on this historic and transitional bill is this: do all Maryland citizens, regardless of county jurisdiction,
have a constitutionally guaranteed right to sovereignty over their municipal government with separation of power beholden to them via elections. Let me repeat that again. Do all Maryland citizens, regardless of their county jurisdiction, have a constitutionally guaranteed right to sovereignty over their municipal government with separation of power beholden to them via elections? What is unique about this bill is, as a constitutional amendment, we're going to present this very important question about expanding the inclusion of rural county residents into political institutions using a statewide referendum. The answer and nature to the question stated requires no other arbitrator than the people in direct democracy. I, like the opponents of this bill, am in 100% agreement that the citizens have a right to determine whether they should live under a sovereign government or a non-sovereign municipal one by referendum vote. My experience here has taught me to find common bipartisan ground and advance from there for success. This bill does exactly what we're in agreement on. Therefore, even if you believe non-sovereign municipal government is a right, you should believe the majority of voters will agree and reject said amendment by putting the municipal government question plaguing counties for over 70 years on their ballot statewide. The question has never been submitted statewide to the people and needs to be done. The opponents will use the same flawed arguments against this amendment referendum used on the cannabis and reproductive rights amendments. The majority of their voters in their counties do not support its passage, so they should be exempt from enforcement, is their position held. May I remind my colleagues, this is the exact same political position and argument held by southern states regarding the enforcement of the Civil Rights Act. Maryland is a southern state, may I remind us all. The expansion of citizens gaining power and influence upon political institutions has always been met with ignorance throughout history. This is no exception. I highly recommend all 187 of my Assembly colleagues to read an enlightening and compelling book titled Why Nations Fail, advised to me by my intellectual brethren, Chair Corman, who I, for the record, hold as one of the most intellectual minds of the General Assembly. I say so due to the fact that we read the same books. Prosperity of the masses comes from the expansion of their sovereignty and influence upon both the political and economic institutions controlling their lives. The science has both concluded the axiom of such as true. Therefore, by the committee holding a vote and moving this historic bill for public referendum to the floor, we shall allow a proper public debate to unfold so that ultimately the voters, our bosses, decide the question presented and make history in doing so. For no other state in the history of our nation has ever attempted to guarantee all of its citizens sovereignty over all county governments with separation of power. It would truly make our great state progressive in the realm of political science. The referendum would appear on the 2026 ballot, which is our nation's 250th anniversary declaring its sovereignty from an institution structured like a commissioner government. I will end with a quote from the great political science father, who I seek for strength, intellect, and inspiration, Aristotle. Quote, "Courage is the mother of all virtue because without it, you cannot consistently perform the others." Thank you for your time, and I urge you to pass House Bill 28.
Thank you so much, Delegate Bouchard. Does anyone have questions for Delegate Bouchard? Seeing none, we will move to the opposition. I see we have Michael Sanderson.
Thank you very much.
No, thank yous. From AMACO and Bruce Bariano.
Get a mic.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. I'm Michael Sanderson with the Maryland Association of Counties. I just put a hold on Why Nations Fail at my local library. I have an aspirational peer group to I'd like to be like them someday. Sit in opposition to the bill before you, and I don't want to dwell too deep in the specifics of the bill. This bill is a little more detailed than just every county would have to go to two-branch charter government. There's a number more details, and some of our current charter governments would probably have to change their structure to accommodate. But I think forest and trees moment. The voters have spoken on this issue locally in a number of places in Maryland relatively recently, in both Frederick and Cecil counties within the last 3 election cycles, basically. Both of those jurisdictions contemplated full two-branch charter government. They built the whole structure. They had all sorts of citizen and resident engagement to build a proposed charter. They put it before the voters, and the voters said, yes, we want that, let's do it. Those jurisdictions went ahead, full charter government. Just this last election, Charles County went through the same process, built a charter proposed in Charles County, put it before the voters, and the voters in Charles County said, no, we don't choose that direction. We want to stay at the moment as a code home rule county that have a degree of independence from the state legislature and a degree of their own home rule authority through that process. Same time, Wicomico County, that has a two-branch charter, had a charter amendment to basically eliminate one of the branches of their government. And their voters thought about that and said, no, we want to stay with a two-branch system. That's basically what this bill points. What I'm getting at is the system we have today, where the voters in each jurisdiction get to build and craft the jurisdiction that they want and the leadership and representation structure that they want, is by far the overwhelming consensus in America and should remain the consensus in Maryland. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Vice Chair. For the record, Bruce Bariano. I'm here on behalf of Washington County, Queen Anne's County, Caroline County, and St. Mary's County, as I was last year, in very strong opposition to this legislation. To follow the lead of my colleague, provisions exist today in the Maryland Constitution to allow those counties that want to change government to change government. One of my clients, Washington County, had a referendum on 3 different occasions over the years precisely on this and defeated it each time. This is a non-issue, an absolute non-issue. The beauty and the magnificence of Maryland, and I'm from the Bronx, New York, is 24 counties that are diverse geographically, ethnically, economically, culturally. It is America in miniature. It is a state that I've come to love deeply and sincerely for the people, of the people, and by the people. And the people can make choices right now. We don't need this bill. You saw that last session. I asked you again to give it an unfavorable report. I know the wishes and the intentions of the sponsor are sincere and real, but this is it's just unnecessary. It's Michigana. It really is.
Thank you, Mr. Bariano. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Bariano or Mr. Sanders? Thank you. Seeing none, we will move to our last bill of the day. HB 273, Delegate Nick Allen, residential leases, late payment penalties calculation.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair, distinguished colleagues, and Delegate Naraki. For the record, my name is... I rolled out slowly out there. All right. My name is Nick Allen. I'm here to testify in support of House Bill 273. It's my bill dealing with late payment penalties and calculation. The committee passed this bill last year, and it passed the House before being held up by our colleagues across the Senate. This is the shortest bill I've ever had and probably will ever have. It consists of one word, and that word is unpaid. This will ensure that a late rent payment fee must be no more than 5% amount of the total rent owed rather than the unpaid rent owed rather than the total rent. So I just want to note that we have the support of CASA, the AG's office, Public Justice Center, and the Maryland Multi-Housing Association, which is a very unique coalition. And since this is the shortest bill I've ever had, I'm going to make this the shortest testimony you guys will hear all day. I'm happy to answer your questions.
Any questions for Delegate Allen? No. Do you have any witnesses or any support groups here?
No, like I said, I just wanted to point out the support. Of,
Yes, I see
we do
Aaron
have
Greenfield.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, and Delegate Naraki. Aaron Greenfield here on behalf of the Maryland Multi-Housing Association. We're in strong support of House Bill 273. No reputable housing provider assesses a 5% late fee on a portion of rent that's already been paid. If they're doing so, it's wrong, and this bill makes that clear. For those reasons, we respectfully request a favorable report on House Bill 273.
He's favorable. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Greenfield? Okay. Seeing none, that concludes the hearing of HB 273. Are there any subcommittee announcements?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Housing and Real Property Subcommittee will meet tomorrow at 5:15. 5:15 tomorrow. Housing and Real Property. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Healy.
Thank you very much. For members of the Local Government Subcommittee, we will be having our first meeting on Thursday after the bill hearings. I'm not sure exactly the time, working out with other subcommittees at the moment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Environment Subcommittee will meet tomorrow at 4:30. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Land Use Subcommittee will hold its organizational meeting tomorrow. After floor, we're anticipating 11 a.m. via Zoom. Watch your email inbox. Thank you. Sorry. Land Use Subcommittee, 10:30. Tricia's just alerting me. 10:30 tomorrow. Watch your emails.
Thank you so much. That concludes our hearing for today. See you guys later. We're adjourned.